Hi, folks. Sunday edition of the I Write Radio video cast stroke podcast. I've got Jimmy Hutton and Stuart Lockhead with me today. I'm Norrie Stewart. Stuart's picked a subject today, so I'm going to let him introduce it. Stuart?
Yes, guys. We are looking at a political issue. It is about coronavirus, but it's the politics. In other words, it's why is our government so appalling? Why is it dealing with the crisis so badly? Why are far too many people dying? I mean, when Italy was at this stage of deaths, Sky TV sent a battle-hardened reporting team, all wearing the protective gear, into the death zone in Italy. What's happening in this country? We've looked at today, I've looked at today anyway, Fintan O'Toole, one of our favourite commentators. He's allowed to be a bit more critical of what's happening in the UK because he's an Irishman. But also the wee ginger Doug. And they're basically saying the same thing. Let me just give you one quote. I've got plenty of quotes here, but Fintan O'Toole talks about Boris Johnson. It's about English exceptionalism. The point, his argument basically is that a government with a backing that it's got of English nationalism, having managed to extricate itself from the European Union with lies by saying that England is so perfect and exceptional, cannot possibly follow the rules of the rest of the world.
Jimmy?
I totally agree. London's made a pig's log of this from start to finish. They chose not to be prepared, remembering that they were warned in 2016 by their own report just how poorly prepared they were for any kind of pandemic, and they still kept cutting. So they chose not to be prepared. They then chose not to follow WHO guidelines on testing because that would prove too awkward and actually show that they were ill-prepared. So they found their own wee route for a wee while. We can do it this way, we can do it better because we're dear old Blighty. And now that the shit's hit the fan and it's getting splattered all over the place, they're choosing, well, they're certainly attempting to put the blame elsewhere rather than on themselves, i.e. people using too much PPE equipment at the front line, or people going out when they've been told specifically to stay in. So it's their fault for spreading it. We don't know how it's spreading because they wouldn't give us accurate figures on the spread. They're just giving us piecemeal figures. How can we put it? Massage to fit the narrative that Dominic Cummings has come up with today.
Okay, well, I'd like to go back to the exceptionalism. Fintan O'Toole uses this argument for basically every political spat he has with the British government. He used it with the EU, saying that the reason was this belief in British exceptionalism stroke English exceptionalism. I'm sorry. While I think there is a case to be made that had a part in it, every country in the world is guilty of exceptionalism, including Scotland. Wha's like us, Guy Few and the Rod Deed. If that isn't exceptionalism, I don't know what is. Every country, the French, better lovers, better cuisine. You know, the Italians have got a classier way of dressing, classier cars, etc. The Germans, Wurstburn Dirk technique. Every country has it. So the question isn't whether it exists. The question is whether the British government believes so much in it that they make decisions based on it. So
I think this particular government does. Let's be honest, we've spoke about for the last 3 years. None of us are fans of the Conservative Party, but we've spoken about the hollowing out of the front bench. Any talent has been thrown out if they did not go down the route of Nigel Farage, of Farageism. You have to be.
But that isn't exceptionalism, Jimmy. That's
It's me.
incompetence.
It's the whole. It is exceptionalism. They see England as leading the world. They see themselves as better than everybody else. It's why they wanted brown people out of this country. It's why they want Bulgarians and Poles to go home. I'll tell you what. Be interested to see how many English people will jump into the fields and start digging up the crops that are rotting in them. None of them.
Well, yeah. See, I would call that exceptionalism. I would call that racism.
I'll give you another one. There's an example for you, Norrie. See if it was running rife in Scotland, the virus. Do you think they'd shut the border? I guarantee you they would. We've not got the power to do the same up here.
Aye,
But they would shut the border with Scotland in a heartbeat if they thought we were introducing coronavirus to England.
There would be a small percentage of people and a large percentage of the mainstream media who were blaming the Scottish government if it was worse up here.
All right. Well, okay, but okay then, Norrie. Seeing as that you're not accepting the argument that it's English exceptionalism that's at the back of the appalling performance of this current government, what's your explanation for their appalling performance?
Incompetence, and fear.
Okay.
The fear that links into exceptionalism is the fear that this particular Tory government has that the population wouldn't accept a lockdown, which I think goes to a lack of understanding of their constituency.
Well, and Fintan O'Toole's argument is it's the way the lockdown was delivered actually proves that they think the government believe in English exceptionalism. Oh, we can't stop these people going to the pub. When it was announced, it was English people who have the right to go to the pub, not the Welsh, the Irish, or the Scots.
Aye, but that's kind of the point I'm making. He's using exceptionalism to cover as a cover-all argument. I mean, the fact that this government lives in a Westminster bubble and doesn't understand that guys don't leave their place of work at 5 o'clock and go straight to the pub for 4 pints anymore. It's their lack of understanding how society's changed. You know, I mean, I'm sure in somebody's head, the factory gates open, the gates to the docks open, the guys all pile out and go to the pub for a couple of pints before they go home. That's not what happens now. You know that.
Not happened since the 70s, eh?
You know, since they shut down all the big industries where guys did that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, why you would think not going to the pub would lead to riots in the street, I don't know. It's a lack of understanding of what the country now is, not exceptionalism.
All right, okay. Well, this is inseparable for something else that happened. I think, was it yesterday's paper? Oh no, Friday, because it was Good Friday. And the Sun splashed all over its front page that Boris Johnson was out of intensive care. Isn't it a Good Friday? There was nearly 1,000 people died on Friday, but the Sun splashed that all over the front page. And Norrie, they are ramping up this Rule Britannia nationalism.
But Stuart, that's the go-to for everything. It doesn't matter whether it's a pandemic or a petrol shortage or there's pasties missing off the shelves. It's all Blitz spirit. That's the go-to thing. Every time there's a cock-up in Britain, we'll get through it because of the Blitz spirit. How many people are left that would actually had any part in the Blitz?
Well, apparently things are nothing like the received history of the Blitz. There was an awful lot of black market, a lot of criminality going on.
Well, a lot of dodgy stuff, and and we've got the Govan spirit, or the New Haven spirit.
Well, let's throw into the mix why nothing's been said about Brexit. They're scared shitless that they'll lose their because they're in the basis of this government is entirely based on we will finally exit the EU. When is it? The end of this year, 31st of December. And if this crisis continues on into the autumn, that ain't going to happen.
we spoke with Peter Bell about how this crisis may well be opportune for the SNP and the referendum, the second referendum on independence. This is a godsend to the Brexiteers. This gets them off the hook on every level, because anything that goes wrong financially will be blamed on the pandemic, not Brexit. There'll be one, maybe two countries in Europe that do worse than Britain with death tolls, etc. And that will be classed as Europe.
You think so?
Unlikely. I think Britain's easily going to be the worst in the whole of the European continent.
Jimmy, there'll be one or two. I mean, is it Austria or Switzerland that's taken a big hit? I can't remember.
Definitely not Austria.
But, and if that doesn't pan out, it'll be, as is already happening, the Germans left Italy to drown. The French aren't speaking to the Germans, who aren't speaking to the Italians, who aren't speaking to the Spanish.
Some of the stories that are already appearing are horrendous, given that the Germans sent flights into Italy and flew ICU patients to Germany because they had excess ICU capacity. And that is reported as Germany leaving Italy to drown in the right-wing press in this country. I mean, it's just making up stories to cover for the fact that we're not doing quite so well.
Well, I think that's maybe the point of this article as much as anything, that English exceptionalism is also the reason why the media in this country is so bad at holding this government to account.
Well, they're no journalists anymore, are they? I mean, seriously, the political editor of The Sun, some of the stuff I actually quite like Tom Newton Dunn. He's well-spoken, he's quite smart, I think. But my God, he's made a right pig's lug of this. Some of the stuff he's been tweeting has been incredible.
In a parallel universe, Boris Johnson would be back on the ward with blisters on his arse, and Tom Newton Dunn would be in the ICU unit with fucking severely chapped lips.
Aye, that's what I was about to say the same thing, mate. I was hoping that he had a bit of 4x2 strapped to his back because he was that far up Boris. It was incredible. And ludicrous. But the entire press are guilty. The entire press are guilty of giving them a free pass here. I mean, Dominic Raab, can he stand up and be accurate and truthful? Matt Hancock still will stand at a podium and tell lies. I mean, he's at a podium, he's at the top of government, and he will still say absolutely anything that comes into his head, and the media didn't fact check him on it. And Priti Patel yesterday, she made Diane Abbott look like bloody, what's his face? Dr. Stephen Hawking. Her mathematical skills yesterday were ludicrous.
I mean,
she got her tens and hundreds a bit mixed up.
To be honest with you, somebody with a farter that size having to stand on a box, I was just waiting for her to go through it. That would have been the bit of TV for this whole thing for me, if she went through her book.
I watched it. It was oddly enough, I didn't catch the start of it, but I did watch it. And you've got to start with Matt Hancock. You can't ignore how sweetly he sidetracked the question. I gather that was the third time.
Gentlemen, I give you Mr. Hancock at his desk. Wait a minute.
Oh, I need to switch screens to look at this.
No, can he do it? Can he do it? He's about to press the button that says launched because he thinks it's lunch.
Cool. That's dangerous. But he was an expert at sidetracking the question. I gather that was the third time he'd been asked the question. And he passed it on to Priti Patel, and she was floundering.
They cannot simply say, don't know.
No, it's beyond.
They're so inured in the politics of spin that it's physically impossible for them to say, oh, I'm really sorry, we don't have those figures at our fingertips.
Yeah, that's what we're getting now, mate. That's what we're getting. Since they moved Isaac Levido into number 10, that's all we're getting is spin.
Well, that was I was going to ask about.
You can't blame him for it. I mean, that's his job. He's a spin doctor. But it would be nice if some of the factual reporting you could trust from London, but you just can't. You can't trust their numbers. You can't trust their promises when they tell you that they're going to get the equipment to the front line, because they've had 6 weeks to get the equipment to the front line and we're still getting complaints about it.
Stuart,
Well, I was going to ask you about it, Noddy, given that this guy that's now in charge. Well, first of all, I'm going to have to say, Jimmy, yeah, I gather this guy and his mate has moved into number 10 to handle the media. He's doing a terrible job. Why did they bother? And secondly, I believe you've got connections in Australia where this guy's been working and making a complete arse of himself in Australia.
I haven't actually spoken to my brother about this guy, but I will do when I get the chance.
Didn't he make an arse? So he won an election in Australia and then won an election here, so he's hardly doing badly.
Oh, I'm getting a mix of somebody else.
There's a New Zealander as well, isn't it? It's an Australian.
Aye, they're a wee duel, mate. But basically, they're kind of the cutting edge of Cambridge Analytica type data analysis. They're a bit better at it than Dominic Cummings, so hence the reason that they were brought in.
Okay. Well, I mean, Australia's suffering from the same nonsense we are, remember? You know, I mean, their forests are burning down and their PM's opening up new coal fields.
Aye. He's a horse. He's showing him Prime Minister, mate, but he won.
And they voted for him, you know. So Trump here, Trump in America, Boris here, and this guy down there.
By the way, just as an aside, part of that group, did you see the comments that Bolsonaro come out with? The president of Brazil. Aye, it's raining now, and yes, some people will drown, but we'll get through it. Jesus, suffering.
But that, I mean, I think rather than blame the country, Britain or England, which take your pick, as Fintan O'Toole did with this argument about exceptionalism, I think what you do is you look at the top of the pyramid. And I'm quite prepared to accept that these guys believe. I mean, they went to schools that supposedly taught them to lead, told them they were better than everybody else, told them they had a right to dictate to everybody else.
But that's part of the problem. We've been electing people like that for the last 150 years. And prior to that, they were just placed into power. Now we elect them. Well,
I'm quite prepared to accept that there's some sort of misplaced exceptionalism amongst them. But, you know, and there is definitely a section, but it applies to every country that believes that they're special because they're English, Scottish, Welsh, Irish, you know.
But we are, remember. You know what I mean?
Was like us.
No, but you're absolutely bang on, mate. The most arrogant and ignorant people I've ever met in my life totally believe that they were placed on this planet because they're better than others.
It's
Two
called,
most arrogant nations on the planet, like South Africans and Israeli-born Israelis.
Well, I'll tell you who came up with the best theory for it of anybody was a Scotsman, was Calvin. Calvinism. Doesn't matter what you do, if you're one of the chosen, you're going to heaven. And Rabbi Burns summed it up in Wee Willie's prayer. So there's not that many innocents strolling God's good earth when it comes to exceptionalism.
Yeah, well, let's be honest. As a card-carrying atheist, I'd quite happily suggest that anybody that wants to go to heaven should really go there and go there as quick as they possibly can and not take up a position in government of any kind whatsoever.
I just get on with it now.
Absolutely. Can we have a laugh at Jackson Carlo as well?
Oh, yes.
What?
Bringing the Constitution into it when he expressly said that he wouldn't, but then couldn't resist it and telling us that post-coronavirus, the SNP would be stupid to campaign for independence because it's the broad shoulders of the United Kingdom that have helped us get through this. But one, we're not through it yet, Jackson, and two, you can take your broad shoulders and jam them next to the horse's head in your bed.
It's funny the number of people that really don't understand what the score is here. The Scottish government have very little choice other than to follow. They've got some movement. Exactly. The money's dictated by Westminster. Now, unless they do declare UDI on the back of a pandemic and insist that everybody starts paying their taxes into a Scottish exchequer, they have no choice but to go along with the monetary decisions made at Westminster.
Well, there is a think tank based in Cambridge that's saying slightly differently. They're saying that further down the line of this crisis, that all three devolved authorities could well fall out with London.
Well, I have no doubt, because the business demographic alone is so different.
Yeah, that's been noticeable this weekend. How many small business people in Scotland have started whining. Hold it! I've got 5 cafes, and I want a bailout for every one of the cafes.
Well,
I'm sorry,
the
an
Scottish
SNP administration is not going to enact conservative business policy in Scotland. That's not going to happen.
Well, an explanation I think might be needed there, Jimmy, because in England, each business premise is entitled to bailout. In Scotland, they've decided each business is entitled to bailout.
Well, exactly, and not every business has got premises.
But in Scotland, you can get a bailout if you're a fisherman, or if you're an artist, if you run a choir, and your choir is losing out, you can get a bailout for that. It extends far further north of the border than it extends in England. And as I say, these are decisions made by politicians that we have elected. So why businesses in Scotland feel that the politicians that we have elected should just take a telling and do what London tells them, I have no idea. At that point, do they really want to go back to direct rule? Some of them probably do, but not me.
Oh, well, I mean, this idea that we're going to come out of lockdown at the same time as England, when we're possibly 10 days, 14 days behind their curve. Why would we do that? Why would we do that? Just because of the union? What government in its right mind would ask a different part of the United Kingdom to stick to what London does?
Well, obviously we
when
know
the
the
curve's
answer.
different.
It's Boris's government will do that.
I'll tell you, Stuart, I'd be very surprised if Boris's government do that. I don't even think they're that stupid.
The media will climb in behind that suggestion, though. The media will tell us that it's far too difficult for England to come out of lockdown and Scotland to remain in lockdown. So they will try and push the issue and force Nicola Sturgeon into coming out of lockdown at the same time as London, regardless of what the science tells them at that point.
Well, that is, I will take to the streets with proper distancing, if that happens.
A demonstration with proper distancing.
A 42-mile square demonstration, a 42 square mile demonstration of 300 people.
Can we do it in the late afternoon when it's getting dark so that people can see our torches and the glint on the pitchforks?
Sure.
I was thinking about cars, you know. They could be 2 meters apart and we could have 1,000 of them. That would block the road.
Block off the border.
Aye. Well, they do it in France with their tractors just because they can't get their milks at the right prices.
Well, that, I think, was brought up last week by one of us, that is going to be a crunch point.
Definitely.
Because I could see Sturgeon. I think she might actually put her foot down about that one. If she believes that it's going to be detrimental, I think she might turn around and say, no, Scotland stay in lockdown for another week, 2 weeks.
Our medical evidence suggests that another 7 days is going to be useful, so we're going to go for that next 7 days.
Well, right.
And then see how the people react to that.
Well, she's got her own committee as well as SAGE in London because she didn't want to just accept SAGE's scientific opinion. There's always more than one scientific opinion.
Well, no wonder that Klein for UCL's been no UCL. The epidemiologist anyway that came up with 260,000 deaths and then changed it to 20,000 about 2 days later. He's been bumping his gums about various ways of coming out of lockdown, and so far right now, somebody really needs to go to London with a big fish and slap him in the coop and wait to shut him up.
I think you've got. I mean, what annoys me is that I think all this focus on the lockdown. It's easy for the government and the media to look to point at that, and because the business community want it to be eased, but that's taking the focus off the real trouble, which is 1,000 deaths a day.
Aye.
Possibly
Possibly.
1800.
Yeah. And I mean, I wouldn't be surprised by this time next week if it's probably 15,000 plus 10% every day. What's that going to be? I can't remember my compound interest.
15,000 plus 10%.
But that's 10% a day.
1,500 plus 10%.
I was thinking about the total deaths at the moment. I mean, the estimate is that if you count in the care homes and the community, there's probably about just short of 15,000 of deaths, and eventually they'll have to own up to that.
I saw a figure today that reckoned that the non-hospital deaths were 30% of the hospital deaths.
Well, somebody else was saying it was 50%. So it's nobody knows for sure.
That's going to be the big problem in England. That's going to be because they aren't reporting deaths in the community at all. That's going to be a massive, massive number that suddenly just gets plonked down in front of people. And the reaction could, or they'll have to cover it up. And you can't cover up deaths because these people, they have to be registered and these figures have to be recorded.
But you can muddy the waters, Jimmy.
Yeah, but know the amount of people that are dying. I think there's no enough mud in England to cover that, mate. I don't think.
Well, that's, to be honest with you, that's what I expect. I expect there never to be a firm figure, unless it's a good figure, if you understand what I mean. I expect Patel to come out with a different figure to Gove, to come out with a different figure to Raab, and just basically to confuse things.
Should that happen, I would expect the First Minister of Scotland, the First Minister of Wales, to give absolute categorical figures and then say, and we do not believe the figures coming out of England because they have never been honest with us from day one. So why can we expect them to be honest with us now?
Well, then, Norrie, you've already said at the start you can't see her saying that.
I can't see her saying that at the moment, but I do think if it becomes a question of Scotland did worse than England because England are fudging the figures, I think it's quite possible she will. I mean, she seems determined to have definitive figures, or as close to that as you can get.
Yeah. Aye.
And that honesty has a price. And if she's paid that price, she's not going to walk away from the argument.
And let Boris not pay a price. I mean, Let's be honest. Come on, it was bad enough that they were lionising Boris before he went into hospital. The canonisation of this man now, they're almost, I'm surprised they've not applied to Rome to get him beatified this weekend, because it would have been nice to make Saint Boris for Monday morning. Somebody
tweeted that he took one for the team. And just exactly who didn't get coronavirus because he did. Who did he take the hit for? You know, it wasn't me. I've been locked in a cupboard for the last 3 weeks.
and have you been?
They've got an eviction notice for you yet, mate.
And what about this so-called fighting against the disease? I mean, if you've got it, it's got, there's nothing you can do about it. Yes, I think if you've got a long-term disease like cancer, maybe it will be to some extent if it's going on for 2 or 3 years. Your attitude may have something to do with it. But something like this, you can't fight a disease like this.
No.
It's going to get you, it's going to get you.
It's interesting that they've chosen today to start flying kites again about them starting to run low on certain drugs in ICU units in England. Do you think it's deliberate that they've chosen Easter Sunday to start telling us it's not just PPE that they're toiling for, it's actual drugs? And they are already saying to anaesthetists, for example, here is a list of alternatives.
I was going to ask you before Stuart spoke there, what dead cat is big enough to cover up the pandemic mistakes? And you've kind of hinted at it with the drug shortage.
And also they've got one. They've got one to chuck at any point in time, mate, because I'm pretty sure that Prince Philip's in a fridge somewhere waiting to be announced.
I mean, nearly mentioned him. What about the Queen? If she was to catch it, that would they'd get away with it then, wouldn't they?
Hmm.
Aye,
Well,
aye.
let's be honest, that would be a week of blanket coverage where nothing. They could hide absolutely anything, mate. They could actually execute Nicola Sturgeon. Probably it wouldn't make page 10 if Betty goes.
That would be, if any of them go. Doesn't really have to be the Queen.
No.
If any of them go.
True.
And I'll tell you the other thing they'll do, they'll wheel them out to shake hands with legless veterans or something just before, so they've got some situation to tie it to. Prince Philip died after attending the wake of one of the corgis and where he met the plebs. Something along those lines.
You've got a job as a headline writer with the Sun.
The Sun really annoyed me. Unlike Jimmy, I quite like Tom Newton Dunn when he's speaking, when he's on the box.
He's quite an entertaining lad.
Oh, come on, the pair of you. You're no fine. Yes, there's loads of good communicator, but who was one of the world's best communicator? Adolf Hitler.
No, he was not.
He was a brilliant.
Sorry. Who introduced the Nazis into this?
He wasn't a good communicator. He just shouted at people, and he had audiences that were primed to stick their arm up in the air every time he opened his mouth.
I'm talking about communicators. There's an awful lot of good communicators that are really horrible.
I don't actually remember Hitler at any of his press conferences taking questions from journalists that didn't agree with him. I think, did they not all end up in concentration camps before they could ask the question?
Yes, I don't remember anyone taking. You got to go back to when he was a younger man. How do you think he got going?
Well, he was
gangs
in pub.
Gangs of thugs in the streets kicking lumps at people that disagreed with him was kind of his
he was standing up in beer kellers, whipping up the crowd, wasn't he? So I mean,
see, that's that beer keller exceptionalism sneaking in again.
Oh, I like German beer, by the way. That's one thing I liked about Germany when I worked there.
I've only ever tasted one German beer. All the other stuff was lager. When will people stop calling lager beer?
Oh, that's annoying. But German beer is Pils, not lager. It's Pils.
Well, there you are. Well, it's not beer either.
And real German beer is flat, not fizzy like the English version.
Well, the brown
Just
beer.
Drink the Czech stuff and be done with it. The German stuff's as crap as ours. Drink the Czech stuff.
Czechs do make good beer. They do make good beer.
So do the Belgians, but it's lethal.
That's the only place you can get wee heavy now.
All right.
They export it to Belgium.
Shouldn't we lighten the mood?
I've been trying.
A good idea.
I've got a couple of quotes here from Stuart Lee. I had to bring up another Stuart, Jimmy. Sorry about that.
That's all right.
Stuart Lee, the comedian, and I've seen him 2 or 3 times here in Edinburgh, and he does a wonderful stage show. Anyway, let me quote him. He says, Steven Soderbergh's Contagion, 2011, it must be a real movie or something, this ain't real, by the way, features an American sex tourist copulating with a pliant pangolin in a 5G communication mast above an outdoor Chinese restaurant. Their dripping spillages contaminating the bat-based delicacies below. And that's a narrative now accepted as genuine by most US voters at the behest of the president himself.
Right. I don't want that. I'm never going to eat in a Chinese restaurant again because of that.
But Contagion offered he offered hope. Once tested, citizens are given wristbands. We've heard about this, haven't we? That allow them back into society. But hysterical doom-dongers say a whole bunch of corona-style viruses are locked and loaded and ready to be loosed. Is this the new normal? Will we end up with entire forearms full of different coloured wristbands, one for each vaccine?
Is that not what happens at the end of the summer? Would it not be confusing?
Yes, it might be a bit.
Are you non-contagious, or have you been to a lot of gigs this year?
Well, there ain't been that many festivals this year, I don't think.
That's true. That's true. Maybe that will be the new normal then. Is that a friendship bracelet you've got, or are you contagious?
Yes.
I like this idea of the passport, because I know a couple of guys that would have that duplicated and sent out fraudulently in about 2.5 seconds.
I did it myself. I mean, I've got a decent printer. I could knock one up in 5 minutes.
So do our police yet require a letter for your mother if you want to go to the shops?
No, but I see they were harassing people that were sitting on the Portobello Beach, which seems a tad excessive given that, as far as I understand it, was that you can sit on the wall if you want.
I don't know where this, I mean, it's actually quite worrying because, I'm having bother with my back. So if I was to go for a walk, I would have to sit down at some point.
Yeah, well, as we talked about when we saw the Chief Constable, with his pre-written speech, beautifully done for him by one of Nicola Sturgeon's advisors. But they've always said that they would police with consent and with common sense. But there were roadblocks on the 82 yesterday, and as far as I'm concerned, that's overreach. They don't have the right
where does
to
the
operate a
82 go?
roadblock. 82 heads north, mate, up towards the Highlands. But they don't, as far as I understand it, setting up a roadblock and asking people where they're going is overreach. They can advise people, and there are guidelines telling you about essential travel, but there's nothing in the law. There's no list of what's essential travel and what's not.
But Jimmy,
I worry about police overreach at this time.
Would it not be allowable to stop the Highlanders coming down here stealing our bread and bog rolls?
I'm no fussed if the Highlanders want to come down here and steal bread and bog rolls. Charge on, we're all Scots, mate. I have issues with Police Scotland overreaching their powers, and I have issues with the Chief Constable, who, let's be honest, was fifth choice for his job, because they had 4 ranked police chief constables before him.
And more amazingly than that, he's got a Scottish accent.
Aye, I was the first one that actually came out of Scottish police that got the job, having tried 4 down south. But I do worry about overreach, mate. I think some of the things that have come out of that boy's mouth, not when he was standing next to the First Minister, obviously, because he would have got slapped down. But some of the stuff that's come out of his mouth and come to his office are a tad worrying. So he bears watching.
Well, I fully expect an Ur Willie style of policing now that we've got a Scotsman in charge. So it'll be a whack round the lug if you get caught with a joint, and a boot up the arse with a tackety bit if you sit on your pail too long.
Oh yeah, I can see that. Not too bad.
So, anything else this weekend that struck you this weekend? Well, Friday, Saturday.
Not really, mate. It's all been very quiet, hasn't it? And I noticed that the streets are ludicrously quiet. I'll give you a laugh though. I did see Dawson going past my window yesterday, Norrie, at 9:30 with a bottle of vodka in his hand, or a half bottle of vodka in his hand.
Dawson, I should mention for the listeners, Dawson is a local, what will we call him, an eccentric.
A Jakey.
And no, Dawson's funny. He's harmless and he's funny.
He's harmless, mate.
Sorry?
He's not that harmless to his cell. He was found about 10:10 yesterday, lying face down in the middle of Portland Street.
Oh dear. I like Dawson.
So do I. He's quite entertaining at times. But when he goes past my window singing at 7:30 in the morning because he's already blootered, I could cheerfully kick him up and down the street.
He's an interesting case. Do you think with the amount of alcohol in him, he'll ever get coronavirus?
Probably not, mate. But when he finally dies, he'll go up to Warwickstead and he'll burn with a purple flame for about 4 days.
He's quite a young guy, Dawson.
You're going to have to explain that one to the listeners.
I'm sure that some of them have done O-grade chemistry.
Well, I can't mind. You've thrown me right off thinking about Dawson.
Oh dear, I do apologise.
Nah, lost it. Stuart, you must have picked. There must be something. Oh, I know what it was, guys. It was Lisa and Andy on Mar today, insisting that they recall Parliament.
It's coming back anyway.
When?
Yeah, they're back. They're back a week on Monday anyway, aren't they?
Aye.
No. I'm talking about actually sitting. They're not going to sit.
Are you sure?
I'm pretty sure the way she
No,
was
Parliament.
talking.
Parliament's going to be open, but it'd be difficult to have a full sitting of Parliament. The problem is there's no real way of Westminster doing a cyber Parliament like they've done elsewhere because it's so backward.
Well, Keir Starmer was demanding that they've got a set up in New Zealand where the leader of the opposition is chairing a committee to oversee the government's performance on coronavirus, and they do it virtually.
All right, good. Well,
Yep.
the reason I brought it up was you've got the unusual situation where I would say unique situation, where you've got a new leader of the opposition that's possibly not going to get to ask the Prime Minister, both because the Prime Minister's been hospitalised and because they don't have any methodology for him to do it. He's not going to get to ask the PM a question for possibly 2 months.
Yeah, they'll have to do something. I mean, Parliament's meant to reset on the 21st of April, so there have to be ways to do it. They have to find ways to do it, regardless of how difficult it might be technologically. Because
they're going to open it. What's his name?
These powers need. I think that was it 2 months that they gave themselves. No, wait a minute, that was the Scottish Parliament, wasn't it?
No, that Jacob Rees-Mogg has climbed out of his coffin to announce that it will be sitting on the 21st of this month.
But will it be sitting, or will it be open?
I'll give you both hands. I don't know.
Parliament will be in operation. It's just how they do it.
That'll be interesting. Because the Tories will not be able to forego the opportunity to slant it to their advantage. They simply won't be able to do it.
Well, as long as it's not sitting, it is of course to the government's advantage.
They didn't care if it's open or no. They've got an 80-seat bloody majority. When they're sitting, it doesn't matter what Keir Starmer's got to say. Anything that he suggests will be voted down.
Aye, but the point being, well, that's the other question. Will it be, if it is virtual, will it be public? Because what you need to see is the question being asked, whether they do anything about it. But the questions need to be put into the public domain, or people are just going to go along with what the government says. I'm really sorry. There should really be 5,000 deaths a day, but we've done such a good job. There's only 2,000, for instance. You know, is that us? Come to the wall?
I think we've kind of hit the wall, mate. What are we expecting for this week, though? Just in terms of, are we still expecting to see an upturn in the curve in Scotland? Because certainly the numbers of people in ICU have been dropping, but it's noticeable just how many now, every day they're telling us, have coronavirus and are not in hospital. That's becoming quite a large number, I've noticed over the last few days.
I did read quite an interesting article about the sort of trickle through of ways to treat the actual infection. And apparently introducing oxygen earlier, not under pressure, seems to make quite a difference. So whether these new methods are cutting down on the need for the ICU beds, well,
yeah, because as I say, Noddy, that number's been going up. Folk that have it, that aren't in hospital, and presumably they have the mild form that they say 80% of us get anyway, and because there's no real problems with capacity in Scotland. They've not got anywhere near the 3,000 ICU beds that they said they would have prepared. I mean, they're not even close to it.
Well, there won't be problems if folk are dying at home.
True.
You know, so I expect next week, number-wise, will be a bit of a guddle.
Aye.
Start of the week till they get this.
No. There's National Records of Scotland are meant to have switched to a 7-day reporting.
Well, but
there shouldn't be a big lump come Wednesday.
No, there's still going to be, Jimmy. There's still going to be two figures: a weekly figure from one department.
I
And
know that, but we're not going to get the big boost that we ended up with last week because we got 2 on Monday,
well,
2 on Monday, 2 on Tuesday, and 80 odd on the Wednesday because they weren't counting them. That shouldn't happen this week.
we're going to get the first weekly report in about 10 minutes. So goodness knows where that's going to put it.
No,
Well,
the NRS figures are coming out on Wednesday because the NRS published their first set of figures on Wednesday. And if it's going to be weekly, it will be on Wednesday.
I thought they were moving to a 7-day-a-week
They are, and
situation, so
they are,
can put the
Norrie,
figures out, but there would be a
and
lag of a couple of days.
the figures that are, the deaths that are happening out with hospital are being reported each Wednesday. And the deaths that are happening within hospitals there shouldn't be that gimpy period, the 2 days that we got last week when we had 2 on Monday, 2 on Tuesday, and I think it was 81 on the Wednesday. It should be roughly, well, it should be more accurate.
Well, we'll no doubt see, and we'll see if they try to emulate Nicola next week instead of lying through their teeth. Okay, guys. Thanks, Stuart Lockhead. Thanks, Jimmy Hutton. I'm Norrie Stewart. Thank you for listening, folks. Hope you enjoyed it. We'll no doubt be back tomorrow to keep you aware of any dead cats that get thrown on tables.
Big
Cheers
fish.
for now, folks. Big fish. All the big fish are in Westminster, Jimmy. Nobody tell you that.
No, they're the big jobbies, mate.
And on that cheerful note, we will finish.